students, I am RG ma'am is with you to start the new chapter of today. The new chapter name is Conservation of Plants and Animals. So students, I am going to start the lecture number 1 of Conservation of Plants and Animals. So students, you should think this thing that why we need to conserve our plants and animals. Why it is written over there every time that do not pluck the trees, do not cut the trees, or do not hunt the animals. Why they are necessary for our environment. You have to understand this thing. Okay students, so first let us take the topic over here. The topic includes the conservation of plants and animals. Now what do you mean by the conservation? Conservation means if you are using your natural resources very wisely and judiciously, then it is known as the conservation. Means students, the natural resources like the plants, the animals, each and everything which is present in our environment are very helpful for us. So we should use these natural resources by keeping in mind this thing that they are important for our future purpose also. Okay students, so this is meant by conservation. Now I want to give a very small intro of conservation of plants and animals. So why it is important students? Actually nowadays what is happening due to urbanization. Do you understand the term urbanization? Urbanization means if a rural area is getting developed into an urban area, that is known as urbanization. Okay students, so now due to urbanization what is going to happen, that the trees are being cut on a large scale, that is known as what? Deforestation. Now what will happen? The plants are cut. Now they are going to consume the carbon dioxide which is released in the atmosphere. Now who will receive it? Because you have cut the all trees present over there. So it is a great problem, and due to this the excess amount of carbon dioxide is getting released into the atmosphere. Okay, so we have to keep a track record of which plant and which animals are being hunted or cut. Okay, you have to read all these things about in this chapter. Okay students, we will read about the movements which happened for the conservation of our wildlife, for the conservation of plants. Okay, in this lecture only I am going to tell you about the chipko movement, the very familiar movement for this thing. Now students, you have to understand this thing that in our environment all the cycles plays a greater role. In the past lectures we talked about the nitrogen cycle. Okay, now we will talk about the water cycle, the oxygen cycle, and many more cycles in this lecture because they are very important. If they are coming on the earth from the atmosphere, okay, to the human being, then they are being transported again to the atmosphere. Now how this process happens, we are going to study each and everything about in this chapter. So firstly let us see the contents of this chapter. So students, the contents of today's lecture are, first is the silviculture. Now what is silviculture students? Silviculture means that the conservation of the plants and animal. Now why it is important? As we have discussed that it is important for our future purpose also. If we keep on destroying our natural resources, that is the plants and animals, then in the future we are not going to get them. Okay, and it will become a threat for the survival of future organisms. Next content is the importance of forest, that is included in the silviculture. The deforestation. Now deforestation means cutting of trees on a large scale. It is known as deforestation. Usually you have been seen that around your home also some trees are being cutted down and then the new things are developed, like the buildings are developed, the hospitals are developed, schools are developed. But we are getting the loss of the natural life. Okay. Next, causes of deforestation. What are the causes of deforestation? Obviously for the urbanization. Next, The effects of deforestation. Now, what are the great effects of deforestation? We will study about the global warming, the greenhouse effect in this lecture only. Okay. Next is conservation of forest. Now, why the conservation of forest is necessary? Actually, some plant species which were very important to our society are getting extinct now, and because of that, the plant species are not being new generated. So, if a plant species get extinct, then the species new are not formed of that plant. Next, chipko movement. Now, the chipko movement, we will study about this thing also, that how the chipko movement took place in the different parts of our country, India, and why did it take place? Why was the movement started and who started it? Okay, so all these topics are going to be covered in this lecture. So let us start firstly with the silviculture. What is silviculture, students? Let us see the definition. It is a branch of science which deals with management and development of forest trees. Okay, so it is a branch of science which deals with the management. Management means where the trees have to be managed, which kind of trees have to be managed. Okay, actually the trees may be wild also, they may be weed also. Okay, so they have to be managed also. Okay, development of forest trees. The development officers which work in the forest are very responsible for this kind of management. Okay. Now, what is the importance of forest? So, first point is, forests are valuable natural resource of following significances. Now, why they are valuable? Okay, so first is, forests are an important component of the environment to maintain ecological balance. Now, what is ecological balance? Ecological means the balance which is kept between the wildlife and the plants. That is known as what? The ecological balance. Okay. Next point, forests provide habitat to a large number of plants. Obviously, large number of plants have been planted in the forest because they grow with their own through wind pollination or cross pollination. Okay. Third point is, they also maintain carbon dioxide and oxygen concentration in the atmosphere. So obviously, if the plants are there, then they will maintain the balance between the oxygen and the carbon dioxide, because what they do, they take in the carbon dioxide and release oxygen in the environment for the survival of a living organisms like a human being or an animal. Okay. Now, did you understand what is the importance of forests, students? Fourth point, they are also helpful in prevention of soil erosion and landslides. Actually, if the plants are present, then they will not allow the soil to get eroded, and they will save us from the landslides. Next point, dead plants and parts are decomposed and form the humus which enrich the soil. Now, what is humus? Humus is the topmost layer of the soil. So, it is the topmost layer of soil. So, you can see here, if the plants or the animals die, now what will happen? The decomposers will attack on them. Okay, they will decompose it and produce a maximum amount of the nutrients which are present inside that dead and decomposed matter. So, it will mix with the soil, making the soil enrich in nutrients, that is humus. Now, 6th point, forests are also helpful in the formation of fossil fuel. Obviously, they will form the fossil fuel. Why? Because animals also die, and if animals die, what will happen? The fossil fuels will be formed because of their decomposition process. 7th point is, they provide us some useful products such as gum, paper, timber, medicines, etc. Obviously, students, forests are very, very important for our society because they provide us with the useful components like the gum, okay, timber, paper, wood, medicines, each and everything. And even they are the shelter for the animals which they living in the forest. Now, next is deforestation. Now, what is deforestation, students? The loss or continual degradation. Continual degradation means if you are continuously degrading any kind of thing, that is known as continual degradation of forest habitat due to natural or human intervention is called as deforestation. So it is usually due to urbanization. What happens, students? If we want to construct any kind of building, school, hospital, then what we will do? We will cut all the trees which are present over there. Okay, so this is a sort of deforestation. Now, causes of deforestation. Now, what are the causes of deforestation, students? What will be the causes of deforestation? First, I have told you that it may be urbanization. Now, secondly will be what? So, think it and then we will see all the points. What are the causes of deforestation? So, first is the intensive agriculture. Intensive agriculture means if we are doing the agriculture purpose on a large scale of land and if we are not growing the trees over it, means we are cutting down the trees and then we are doing the agriculture on that land. So, it also a cause of deforestation. Next is the construction of dam. Okay, so for preserving the water, the construction of dam is necessary. So, the trees are being cutted down. Next is overgrazing of animals and farmlands. Yes, students, we should stop overgrazing also. Okay, farmers usually do this thing. What they do? They send their animals to the different fields. And what they do? They eat all the plants which are present over there. So, this is the overgrazing by animals. So, this should be stopped. Next is urbanization. Very importantly, can be asked in your examinations also. Commercial logging. Commercial logging is very important point. It means harvest of timber from forest with the intent to sell the product. Now, timber is a very useful product. Actually, it is used in making different kind of things like table, like chair. All the furniture items are being prepared from timber itself. Okay. So, for extracting the timber from the forest, we need many resources. Okay. So, people go to the forest, they extract the timber from them. So, this type of thing is known as what? Commercial logging. Now, next is effects of deforestation. Now, what can be the effects of deforestation, students? Actually, what happens if you are deforesting? So, what will happen? The amount of carbon dioxide will be increased in that place. Okay, because the plants which were present already there were taking the carbon dioxide from the humans. Now, what will happen if you are cutting down the trees? Now, who will take your carbon dioxide there? Okay, so let us see the effects of deforestation. So, first is the effect on soil. What is the effect on soil? Roots of trees help in binding the soil particles together. Now, it is very important. The roots which are present of the trees help in binding the soil particles together. The soil particles are binded together by the roots of the trees. Now, if you are cutting down the trees, what will happen? Who will bind the soil? When this protective cover of vegetation is destroyed, soil is left loose and hence more soil is lost due to erosion by wind and moving water. Now, if you are cutting down the trees on a greater purpose, now what will happen? The soil will get eroded because it will become what? Loose. No one is there to bind it. Loss of topsoil. Topsoil is what? Humus. Okay, loss of topsoil which is rich in humus and nutrients result in reduction in the fertility of soil. Now, what will happen? The fertility of the soil will be lost. Now, I want to give an example over here. What will happen, students? If you are cutting down the tree on a large scale, you are constructing a building or a dam or anything else over there. Now, what will happen if the building has fallen down? after an earthquake or any natural calamity, what will happen? Then land will become barren. Now, if the farmer want to grow the plants or the crop again on that land, he or she cannot grow again. Why? Because the fertility of the soil has been lost. Okay, students? Next point is effect on wildlife. Now, what is the effect on wildlife? Forests, which are the natural habitat of many species or plants, animals and birds. So, they are the natural habitat. Obviously, the plants, animals and birds survive in the forest. The different species can be seen in the forest. Cutting down trees will destroy the homes of these species, which in turn may become in danger. Okay. Now, you can see here what it is written, in danger. If you are cutting down the trees, it will destroy the homes of certain kind of wildlife. Okay, certain kind of animal, and that they will become endangered. Now, next is effect on recycling of the materials. Now, what are the effects on recycling of the materials? First is plants intake carbon dioxide and give out oxygen during photosynthesis. This oxygen is necessary for a human being to survive. Okay, students, so for a human being to survive, this type of process is necessary. Okay, plants take in what? Carbon dioxide and give out what? Oxygen. So, we take in what? Oxygen to survive. So, this is the whole process. Next is an increase in concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere causes greenhouse effect and global warming. Okay, so greenhouse effect or global warming, I am going to explain this thing through a picture in the next upcoming slide. What is greenhouse effect and global warming? It is just the increase in the concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And due to the increase in carbon dioxide, what will happen? The temperature will rise. Okay, students? O2 level in the atmosphere become low due to deforestation. Obviously, what will happen? The O2 level in the atmosphere will become low. Now, let us see next point. Trees draw groundwater up through their roots and release water vapor into the atmosphere by transpiration. Now, what happens, students? If you are watering a tree, what will happen? The tree will absorb all the water through its root, and this water will be carried by the xylem, that is the vascular tissue which is present inside the trees. Okay, this will be carried by the xylem and it will reach all the parts of the tree. Now, what will happen? The leaves part of the tree will do the transpiration. Means it will convert the water in the water vapor form and release it into the atmosphere. And this process is known as what? Transpiration. You can see here, if there is a tree like this, what will happen? The water droplets will occur on the tree. And then these water droplets, by taking the sun's energy, move into the atmosphere. Okay, in the form of what? Water vapor. Now, next is, if a large number of trees are cut down, transpiration rate will be greatly reduced. This in turn will affect the water cycle. Obviously, in water cycle, two things are very important: evaporation and transpiration. If they do not occur simultaneously, water cycle will get disturbed. Okay, students, so this is very important that the trees should do the proper transpiration so that the water goes into the atmosphere in the form of water vapor. So you can see here in this picture, students, what is going to happen. The oxygen is released by a plant, and plants prepare their own food with the help of the sunlight, okay, carbon dioxide and the chlorophyll pigment, the three things which are necessary for performing the photosynthesis process. Okay, now what will happen? Through this, the glucose will be formed, and this glucose is used by the animals or the human beings. So students, we are going to start with the topic carbon cycle. Okay, now what is carbon cycle, students? We are going to see here. Okay, we will understand each and everything, all the steps through this pictorial diagram. Okay, now there are three basic steps through which the carbon is being synthesized, formed in a molecular form, taken up by the animals, and then again back to the atmosphere in the form of carbon dioxide. Okay students, so now how the carbon dioxide produced, okay, by the animals, by the industries, or by anything else. Okay, so we are going to see here the carbon cycle. So first thing is students, this is sunlight, and you know this thing very well that plants prepare their own food in the presence of sunlight, chlorophyll and water. So as you know, the trees have chlorophyll already present in them. So what the basic need it is? First thing is water and second thing is sunlight. So this tree is going to receive sunlight, and through the process of photosynthesis, the food is going to be get produced, which will be eaten up by animals. Okay, now you can see here, this food is being given to the consumers. Okay, the food is eaten up by the animals. Now what will happen? Animals will do respiration process, and in this respiration process, what will come out? The carbon dioxide, which is again released back to the atmosphere. So students, did you understand this thing? Plant is taking in the carbon dioxide and sunlight and chlorophyll for making up the food. This food is being given to the animal, and this animal is doing respiration process. So now the carbon dioxide moves back to the atmosphere. So this is the first step through which the carbon dioxide is being transformed to the atmosphere again. Now let us see the next step. What will happen students? This animal is going to get what? Decomposed. Okay, decomposed means when an animal is going to get die, what will happen? The decomposer come over it, and the dead and decay part remains in the soil. Now they will form what? The fossil fuels. They will form what? The fossil fuels. The fossil fuels are formed by the animals. Now what will happen students? This fossil fuel is being transported to the factories for their use. As you know, the factories run with the petrol, diesel, LPG and many more other resources. Okay, now from this fossil fuel, the factories are running. Now when a fossil fuel combusts, what will happen? The carbon dioxide is released out into the atmosphere again. So this is how the carbon dioxide is released into the atmosphere again. So I am repeating this process again. What is going to happen? This animal is going to get die. Now through decomposition, the fossils and the fossil fuels will be formed. Now this fossil fuel is going to be used by the industries, and then the combustion takes place, and due to combustion what will happen? Carbon dioxide is produced, which again goes back to the atmosphere. So this is the second step of carbon cycle. Now there is another way in which the carbon dioxide is taken back by the atmosphere. So the third one is plant respiration. Now what happens students? When plants respire, the carbon dioxide is released, that goes back to the atmosphere. So this is how the carbon cycle takes place. Carbon dioxide is utilized by the plant, or it is utilized by some other animals, and then it is again back to the atmosphere. Okay students, so did you understand this thing? That carbon dioxide is very necessary, but if we do the deforestation, then what will happen? The carbon dioxide will not be taken up by the plants, and the temperature of the planet will rise. Okay, so this is all about the carbon cycle. Now we are going to understand the carbon cycle again thoroughly with a very small video clip here. So I am starting with the video clip, and we are going to understand each and everything about the carbon cycle. Now it maintains amount of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, that is taking carbon dioxide from the air and then give it back to the atmosphere. Now what will happen student? In the first step, the photosynthesis will be taken place by the plants. The plants will do the process of photosynthesis, and what they will produce? The food which is eaten up by the animals. Now what will they do? They will die and decompose, forming the organic matter and releasing carbon dioxide, which is again back to the atmosphere. Now the decomposition process releases carbon dioxide, which goes back to the atmosphere. Okay, the animal which is doing the respiration releases carbon dioxide, which goes back to the atmosphere. Even the plant which is doing the respiration, the carbon dioxide is released, which goes to the atmosphere. Now the last thing is the formation of the fossil fuel by the factories, the decomposition, the combustion will occur, and the combustion will take place, and the carbon dioxide is released, which goes back to the atmosphere. So you can see here that the photosynthesis is necessary for the plants and the carbon dioxide is required. So it is balanced by the three things: decomposition, respiration and combustion. So this is whole about the carbon cycle. Okay, did you understand the carbon cycle? Now we are moving towards the next point, that is the water cycle. Now students, why is water necessary for all the living organisms on earth? Actually, water is a precious resource and it is necessary for all the organisms because the main metabolic activities are conducted by the help of water. Okay, water is very necessary. Now, how the water cycle will take place? Before starting this, it is a question here. Is it necessary to save water? Yes, students, it is very necessary to save water. Actually, the thing is, without water, the life will not exist. And it is very necessary to save the water because if we are not saving the water, then the living organisms, including the plants and animals, will die. Okay, so let us see the water cycle here. So, actually, students are little bit confused about the terms that comes in the water cycle. So, first thing you have to remember that it includes the terms. The terms are, first one is the evaporation. Okay, evaporation. Remember this thing. Second one is condensation. Third is precipitation. And the last term is also known as collection. Okay, now what is it? We are going to study here. Now, remember this thing, there are 4 basic steps to understand the water cycle. First one is evaporation, and with evaporation, the simultaneous process that occurs by the plants is transpiration. Okay, so you can put a slash over here, or you can see here this plant is doing what? Transpiration. Okay, now evaporation and transpiration both occur simultaneously at the same time. Okay, because both processes are the same. Now how they are same, I am going to tell you in this picture only. So, remember the 4 basic steps. First is evaporation or transpiration. Second is condensation. Third one is precipitation. And the last is collection. Now, we are going to study about the water cycle here. What happens, students, when the sunlight falls on the rivers, pond or seas? What will happen? The water will get converted into water vapor. This water vapor is released into the atmosphere. They come in the form of tiny water droplets. That process is known as condensation. Now, I am repeating again. Evaporation or transpiration. Evaporation means the conversion of water into water vapor. Transpiration means the conversion of water which is present inside the plants into water vapor is known as what? Transpiration. It is only done by the plant parts, that is the leaves. Actually, the water which is supplied to the plant is carried by the roots to the other parts of the plant also. But some extra amount of water is released by the plant in the form of water vapor into the atmosphere. So this is known as what? Transpiration. Now I am taking both the processes simultaneously. First process is evaporation or transpiration, in which the water in the form of water vapor moves into the atmosphere. Now in the second step, the condensation will take place, in which the water vapor will form the tiny water droplets. Now what will happen? They will form the clouds. Okay, After condensation, what will happen? The cloud formation will take place. Now students, what will happen? When the cloud formation will take place, then the clouds become bulky, and after they become bulky, the precipitation process takes place. Now what is precipitation? Precipitation is the formation of the hail's snow, or you can say the water which has been into the atmosphere is coming back to the surface of the earth in the form of hails, snow or rain. That is known as precipitation. And the last part is collection. Collection means actually what happens, the water which is falling onto the earth's surface moves into the ground level. So some water another than ground level moves towards the rivers, seas and ocean. That is known as collection. Okay students, so these are the 4 basic steps of the water cycle. First is evaporation and transpiration. Second is condensation. Third one is precipitation. And the last is collection. Now did you understand the whole water cycle? So let us revise this whole water cycle through a very small video of water cycle. We are going to understand each and everything through this small video. Actually, water is a very precious resource. It is very necessary. Okay, they are collected in different forms in rivers, ponds or seas, lakes. You have listened this thing. It is present in the form of groundwater also. Now, we are going to understand about the water cycle. The first step. The sun heats up the water from ocean, lakes and rivers, and water changes into water vapor by the process of evaporation. Okay, now this process is known as what? Evaporation. Now, in the second step was this buoyancy that the plants are doing, the transpiration process. Now, plants also lose water in the form of water vapor from their leaves into the air by the process of transpiration. Okay, now, as the water vapor rises up into the air, it starts cooling down and form tiny water droplets. These water droplets come together to form clouds. Okay. Now, these clouds are formed here due to tiny water droplets. Now, the condensation process will occur. Okay. Now, the next one, when the clouds start getting heavy, cannot hold the water droplets, they fall back to the earth in the form of rain, in the form of hail, or snow. Okay students, so this process is known as precipitation. Okay, now some of the water that falls on the earth seeps into the ground. This water is available to us in the form of groundwater. As I told you, it seeps under the ground. The whole soil holds it back. The remaining water falls back into the oceans, lakes, rivers and seas. This process is known as what? Collection. Now the remaining water is collected into the ponds, rivers, seas. So this is known as what? The collection. Now did you understand all the 4 steps related to water cycle? Now is it easy for you all to learn this thing? Okay students, now we are moving towards the next part of the silviculture, that is the climatic changes. Okay, increase in the concentration of carbon dioxide gas into the atmosphere may lead to an increase in the temperature of the earth, as carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas. Now what is a greenhouse gas? Actually greenhouse gas is known because it is very necessary for a plant to survive, because photosynthesis is only taken up by the plant in the presence of carbon dioxide. Okay students, so it allows the sun's infrared radiations to enter the earth by stops them from going out of the atmosphere. Now, it is known as greenhouse gas because what happens students, when the sun infrared radiations are coming onto the earth, they are trapped by the carbon dioxide, and this is known as the greenhouse gas. Okay, so as the carbon dioxide is increasing day by day on the planet, then the temperature is also going to increase. Hence, it results in an increase in the temperature, which makes the atmosphere drier. Okay students, so remember this thing, when the carbon dioxide releases and they increase in the atmosphere, then the atmosphere becomes drier. This can lead to reduced rainfall also. This could cause the drought conditions also. Now did you understand about all the climatic changes? Actually what is happening, the deforestation takes place. Now in the deforestation, we are cutting the trees. So we are providing the environment with a lot of amount of carbon dioxide. Okay, now because of this gas, the temperature of the earth will rise and the global warming will take place. Now the next topic will be landslides and floods. Now why the landslides occur? Actually in the mountainous regions, what happens, students? The soil which is grabbing all the amount of rain is being shed off. Why? Because we are doing the deforestation there. And because of deforestation, what will happen? The soil will get eroded and the landslides or the flood conditions will arise. So let us see some points here related to this. So vegetation helps to absorb the rainwater that falls on the earth. So it is very important. Actually the rainwater is absorbed by the vegetative part, that is the plant part. Excessive falling of the trees would mean that a greater proportion of the rain may reach the ground, which could rise to the floods. So rise to the floods is because of the falling of trees. Actually the trees are not available there for absorbing the water, and what will come? The flood will arise. Next is loss of vegetation may lead to reduction in binding capacity of soil particles during rainy season, which in turn lead to landslides in the mountainous regions. So the landslides occur in the mountainous region because of the loss of vegetation. Okay student, now did you understand this thing, that it may lead to the reduction in binding capacity of the soil particles? Actually what is happening, if there is a tree or a plant, the roots bind up the soil and the water with it. Now if you cut the trees or the plant, there are no roots present. So who will bind the soil and the water? This is a great question. So we should do afforestation practice. Okay, we should avoid the deforestation practice because it causes the conditions of landslides and floods. Drought conditions may occur. Global warming is occurring. So they are the main causes of this kind of practice. Now desertification. Now what is desertification, students? Actually desertification means the practice in which the trees are cut down on a large scale. Now what happens? The soil get eroded. Now soil get eroded means it loses the fertility. After losing the fertility, if you want to plant that area, the plants will not grow on that area because the soil has got eroded. Means it has lost all the nutrients. Now did you understand this thing? So first we are going to see all the points related to desertification. Deforestation is major cause which leads to the change in soil properties. So deforestation is the major cause which leads to the change in the soil properties, because we are cutting down the trees and the soil properties, nutrients level changes. Physical properties of the soil get affected by plantation, vegetation. Due to soil erosion, the top fertile layer of the soil is removed. Okay, the top fertile layer which is rich in nutrients gets removed if you do the deforestation practice. So this is very harmful practice, students. Actually, you are just cutting down the trees. Okay, you are cutting down the trees as well as you are destroying the soil level also there. The next point is, gradually the fertile land gets converted into deserts. It is called as desertification. So now this land is getting converted into desert after a certain interval of time. So this process is known as what? Desertification. Okay students, now you can see here in this picture, the land has become barren, the tree has no leaves, and it is to be cut down after a particular interval of time. Okay, so what will happen? The soil will get eroded or it will lose its fertility and no new plants can be grown on that soil again. Now, it is very necessary for the conservation of forests. Now, why forests are very necessary for us? Actually, we say that save forests, save wildlife, save trees, save wildlife. We use these kind of slogans, but we do not follow it because we are very greedy. Okay, so we should not be too greedy that we are destroying the wildlife as well with the forest. Actually, the forest is a habitat of many things. The wildlife exists in the forest itself. Water, even different kinds of plant, different species of animals lives inside the forest in different kinds of habitat. Okay, let us look about the first point, that trees should be planted on a large scale. Planting of sapling is called afforestation. Now, there are actually three terms. First is afforestation, second is reforestation, and third one is deforestation. So, you are very familiar with the term deforestation, that is cutting down trees on a large scale. Okay, now what is afforestation? Afforestation means you are planting the trees first time on a particular land. Then it is known as what? Afforestation. Okay, now reforestation will be understood in the next line. So, what is reforestation? So, when this is done on deforested lands, it is called reforestation. So, if you have cut down the trees on the large scale and after 2 to 5 years, you are planting the trees on the same land again, then it is known as what? Reforestation. Did you understand the difference between both the terms? Afforestation means the planting of trees on a particular land first time, then it is known as afforestation. If you are planting the trees on a deforested land, then it is known as reforestation. And if you are cutting down the trees on a large scale, then it is known as deforestation. You have to understand all the three terms very carefully. Now, establishment of forest reserves and botanical gardens. It is very necessary because a human is very greedy. Okay, because of the use of any kind of wood, the timber, the salt, teak, what we are doing, we are just cutting down the forest. So, it is very necessary to establish the botanical gardens for these kind of important trees. Now, the next point, forest fires, whether due to natural or human-made causes, should be brought under control as fast as possible, because forest fire causes a great loss to the forest, because what happens, they turn into ashes. So, new plants will not be formed and the gene of the plants will also be destroyed. Okay. It will also cause the harm to wildlife as well, because some animals also die, students, in the forest fires. Now, awareness programs should be conducted by school children, organizations, and also through print and television. Advertisements to promote the need to use our forest resources judiciously. Now, this is very important, that the advertisement in the newspapers, in the televisions or the radio or anything else, okay, should be promoted for planting the new trees. Okay, because it is very necessary to do the afforestation practice. If we are just doing the deforestation and not doing the afforestation and reforestation, then what will happen? The amount of carbon dioxide will get very higher in the atmosphere. Okay, the temperature will get rise. So, this type of advertisement programs, the awareness programs are very, very necessary. Okay. Now, the last topic is chipko movement. Now, what is chipko movement? Actually, first you have to understand this term. What does a chipko mean? Chipko means to embrace or hug. Chipko means to embrace or hug. Okay. So, what is chipko movement? First thing is, forests are one of the main sources of livelihood in rural India. Actually, this is very important. The rural people are just surviving because of the forest only. What they do, they cut down the trees on a very small scale and they prepare the daily routine food with the help of these kind of woods. Okay, so this is very important. Next is, this is especially true for a hilly and mountainous area. Now, the next point is, the name of the movement comes from the Hindi word chipko, which means to embrace or to hug. Okay, students, so chipko means to embrace or to hug or to cling also, as the villagers hug the trees to prevent them from falling by the contractor. Now, the villagers protected the trees from falling off by the contractors. Next point is, The first movement against falling of the trees was launched by Amrita Devi of village of Khejri, Jodhpur. Khejri was a village in Jodhpur. Now in this movement, 363 relatives and others sacrificed their lives, still clasping the trees. So they clasped the trees, they clinged the trees, and they were even cut down with the trees. So it was very hazardous condition at that time. Okay, the first person who took this movement was the Gaura Devi in 1973. Okay, then this movement transferred to many parts of the India. Now, Chipko movement took place in village of Mandal in the upper Alaknanda valley of Uttar Pradesh also in April 1973. Now here the people who helped was Sundar Lal Bahuguna, a Gandhian activist and philosopher, played an important role in the success of this movement. So Sundar Lal Bahuguna played a great important role in the Alaknanda valley in Uttar Pradesh. So as I told you, this movement was held in many parts of the India. Okay, first it started with the Uttarakhand, then in Uttar Pradesh, then in Rajasthan in the Khejri village. Okay, now Bahuguna gave the Chipko slogan, ecology is permanent economy. Very important. Ecology is permanent economy. Okay, now this is all about the Chipko movement. So let us start to look. First is they occurred in the Uttaranchal, the first movement which occurred in the Uttaranchal. Now, how did it occur? First thing is that Chipko means to hug or to cling. As you have understood the meaning of this thing. Now, Gaura Devi was responsible firstly for the Chipko movement. She started this movement actually. Okay, now you will see here that what happened during that time. A little girl saw one day that some contractors were coming on their way to cut down the trees with large saw and axe. Okay, she informed this thing to Gaura Devi. Now, what happened? Gaura Devi with her sisters and villagers clinged the trees and prevent them from falling off. They fought with all the contractors. Okay, they were not afraid of the contractors. They fought with them and saved the trees. So what happened? The contractor left that place. Okay, they did not cut the trees. So this is how that started. Now the Sundar Lal Bahuguna was very responsible for the Chipko movement in 1973 in the Alaknanda valley. Now I am going to tell you about the story of Rajasthan, the Khejri village. Actually the Khejri trees were very famous of the Khejri village, Rajasthan. Now in the Khejri village, the Bishnoi communities used to take care all the trees of the forest. Now, there was the ruler of Mewar. Now, this ruler of Mewar advised his contractors and workers to bring the wood of Khejri trees. That is, to deforest these Khejri trees and bring the wood from them. So, what happened as the contractor reached there, the females of that village hugged the trees. Okay, they clinged with the trees. So, 363 relatives died due to this thing, the deforestation procedure. Now, the ruler felt very guilty about this thing. Okay, he was very guilty that what I have done. So, he signed a petition that from now onwards, no tree will be shed off. Okay, no tree will be cutted down. That is, no deforestation will take place. So students, it is very responsible thing and it is our duty to take care of the trees. So it is our duty to save and preserve them. Okay students, now did you understand about the Chipko movement? So students, we have talked about many things. The silviculture, how it is practiced, the things which are related to silviculture, that is deforestation, the occurring of landslides and floods, global warming, afforestation, deforestation, reforestation, Chipko movement and many more things. In the next lecture, I am going to tell you about many new things, that is the red data book which is kept for the record of the species of plants and animals and many more things. Okay students, thank you.